spread out. So we will identify ourselves as the Church of Jesus Christ. So welcome to the Church of Jesus Christ, and welcome, Church of Jesus Christ. Inspect what you expect, part 5 tonight. So our first 4 sessions, we tried to keep this as short as possible, as concise as possible, but also, in case you've missed any, get you completely caught up so that you jump right into our session and you don't miss a beat. So the last 4 weeks, this is what we talked about. Adam fell, all people fell. Everybody begins in good, everybody becomes bad, all on our own. Not because of the original sin, because of our own bad decision-making. Paradise lost can become paradise found. Man begins with great expectations. Man is given a second chance back into the garden, back into paradise. That comes as a 2-step process. Apologize to and commit to God. What we are apologizing for is who we've been. What we're committing to is who we're going to become. We're going to do better. When we make those statements to God and we're baptized, just as Jesus Christ was, our second chance begins. And again, it begins with great expectations, both God's and our own. Our resurrected lives, hold just for a sec. And I apologize for the pause, but sometimes this one bleeds over just a bit. And lost. All right, just if you would, while I'm finishing up this slide, check and make sure you're muted to help us out. Everybody, that's everybody. Our resurrected lives begin our second chance to meet all these expectations, great as they may be. We have an opportunity to again meet and exceed these expectations. Our resurrected lives begin to define and redefine all of these great expectations. And these expectations define and redefine your personal spiritual journey. That's where we've been. Session 5, should we lower expectations? Before I answer this question, I just want to make you aware, I just might be answering in a couple different ways. So bear with me. Tonight's class is all about empowerment, to supply you with information and choice. Our sessions should never create confusion, never create an unhealthy guilt, leaving here feeling bad about yourself. Never. Any church service is intended to provide inspiration, evidence, and then healthy options. Probably better options, in fact. One significant beauty of our Savior, Jesus Christ, he always offers us a fresh start. So if you find something that uncovers something, okay, that you want to apply to your life, then do it. Just please do that with no guilt. Oh, I wish I would have in the past. And that's as much guilt as necessary. If the class confirms something you're doing already, keep doing it. And if you find that you can improve upon that by way of something someone said or something you learned, then do that also. That makes it even better. But again, we leave our sessions always bettered, not feeling poorly about ourselves, but feeling better about ourselves, that God has given us even one more opportunity to do things right. All right. Should we lower expectations? Absolutely no. With no variation, no. To lower one's expectations may indicate exhaustion, fear, even defeat. We're called to discover, uncover, and attain God's intended greatness for each one of us individually. And so surrendering is another way of empowering the evil one in his temptations. He's trying to discourage us. When we show that discouragement, we're empowering him. And that dishonors God. Maybe we lower our standards with a purpose. like it's probably to make a realistic, more attainable correction. Oh, I was looking too high. Let me bring that down. I can reach this rung. That rung is a little too high. I want to assure you of something. You are not unable. You are not unworthy to attain God's intended purposes for you. Remember, it's God who chose you, having full knowledge of who you are, what your limitations are, what your potential is. And so he created within you his purpose. So understand, you're neither unable nor unworthy to attain what he has promised for you. So absolutely no, don't lower those expectations. We begin our walk with God possessing a love for him, possessing full faith in him. Remember who you were then, because the same issues that were are. Those issues that were then are now. We overcame issues of unworthiness. And that had, for a long time, for many of us, kept us from connecting with him. I'm not worthy. The beautiful youth podcast this morning released, and it's about a young man who had these very issues. It was so great to hear that confirmation to our class. We embraced, hear this now, we embraced all of this when we viewed ourselves as being undeserved as a reason, as a purpose, as an inspiration to repent. But then someone much trickier than us comes back into our life and tries to utilize these very same tools, these very same purposes to stop God's process in us. He's going to bring up unworthiness. He's going to bring up undeservedness. That's my own word. It's a made-up word. None of which are true. All of which are true. I hope you understand that. Of course we're unworthy, but it's Jesus Christ who makes us worthy. So we shouldn't stumble with that. God knew who you were when he called you. God knew who you were when he placed his expectations in you. So don't vary. We must not yield to being lesser when God is offering greater. If you hear nothing else tonight, hear that. We must not yield to being lesser when God is freely offering greater. Our natural abilities failed us. We confess that. So we welcomed in God's spiritual power. And with that, we can do anything. Most people settle for a less fulfilling existence. Hear that again. Most people that you know, and maybe you become subject to this at times, if not always, settle for a less fulfilling existence than God intends. People often review their lives and conclude their failures are signs to surrender. Beaten down, broken spirits, unwilling to risk any more. Every time I get filled with hope and I start to expect, I trip again. I'm just going to stay here. I remember that great scene from the movie Rocky, and in it, he's knocked down to the canvas. And Mick, his corner man, says to him, "Stay down, Rock, stay down." And that's what life shouts to us from the corner. Stay down. If you get back up, you're risking again. Just stay down. And so individuals so often trade out their callings to return to a comfortable, what they determine as their normal. And they're comfortable in their normal. Most people live an unfulfilled life of man-made, handmade, common. And God addresses that. He addresses that specifically. Each one of you cleansed by the touch of God. What does he say about that? What God hath cleansed, that call not common. You are not common anymore. So there was a movie called Amadeus. Little backstory in case my video doesn't work. Amadeus Mozart and Antonio Salieri. They were said to be competing composers. There is a question on whether Salieri really existed. And whether that name existed or not is less important than there were Salieris, if not one. There were many in his time. Salieri wrote fearfully, risk-adverse. So his music was nice, but never more than just pleasant. Mozart wrote fearlessly. He wrote differently than anybody else. He wrote from his heart. He put notes above lines that had never been above lines, below lines that had never been below lines, exciting, unexpected ways. Throughout this movie capturing Mozart, he had this giggle, this high-pitched squeal of delight when he'd play his music, and it would sound like he heard it in his heart and in his mind. He'd giggle, and it became a beautiful sound, yet a grating sound to Salieri, because Salieri never went so far high on those notes or so far low on those notes. He never took those chances. Result, today Mozart is remembered and regarded for his creativity, his courage, ultimately his greatness. God-given greatness. Salieri remains unknown. So that's why I started with, we don't even know that he was. His music never came close to Mozart's success. By the way, Mozart never even knew his own success. In his old age, and Salieri in this story lived to a very old age, he confessed to having accepted mediocrity as his way of life. From the beginning to the end, he accepted mediocrity, never going too high, never going too low. He was in that safe middle space. His jealousy of Mozart never diminished. His entire life, 32 years after Mozart passed, he still despised the memory of who this young composer was. And all of this, in this movie, all of it literally drove him insane. He lived his last years of his life in an asylum. Amadeus ends with this story being told by Salieri himself and became a warning for all of us. Don't settle for mediocrity. And the last thing you hear in the movie perfectly is Mozart's squeal of delight. I'm going to see if we can get this to play because I love this scene and it's so inspirational, and I hope it works for you. Maybe it will.
You're merciful, God. He destroyed his own beloved rather than let a mediocrity share in the smallest part of his glory. He killed Mozart and kept me alive to torture. 32 years of torture, 32 years, slowly watching myself become extinct. My music growing fainter, all the time fainter, till no one plays it at all. His.
Morning, Professor. Time for the water closet. Then we have your favorite breakfast for you. Sugar rolls. Love those. Fresh sugar rolls.
I will speak for you, Father. I speak for all mediocrities in the world. I am their champion. I am their patron saint. Mediocrities everywhere. I absolve you. I absolve you. I absolve you. I absolve you. I absolve you all.
as he went through this asylum, filled with others who allowed their lowering of expectations to drive them to this condition. And he felt he was the one who was empowered to absolve them from their decision making, because no one had sinned more than he had. He had the most to give and gave none of it. And it drove him to this place. Fabulous, fabulous, fabulous. And we hear that last giggle, knowing that to his last moment, he was still hearing Mozart giggle with delight in reaching God's expectations. That's what we have awaiting us. So we all have music. All of us have music that must be played, must be enjoyed by others, that only you can play. This is your specific gift. And it's all accomplished, all of this, fulfilling all of God's intended purpose for you is done in praise of God, not you. So we're called to discover, uncover, and reach his envisioned purpose for each one of us. Once we hear our own music, once God confirms within us his expectations, we have to battle against silencing God's gift within us. Yes, it's a risk. Once we know what God has placed in us, we're thrust forward to pursue his purposes. And we maintain, not lower, maintain our expectations to show in some way our gratitude to God, and in some way to honor him for what he's given us. Now, here's the key to all of this. Please don't interpret what music means. Not all of us are going to be Mozart. Please don't overinflate what greatness might represent in your life. Not all of us are going to be on a stage somewhere. Not all of us are going to be famous. That's not what greatness is. Greatness is giving of oneself. Don't assume the music we play or the greatness intended for us is grander or unreachable. More importantly, unreachable. It's reachable. But also, don't discount that it may be grand. We're called to fulfill his intended purpose in us. Your music, your song, your melody, your symphony, it's defined by God, not by you, not by me. Your life, or even if it's just one moment of greatness, is determined by God. Remember this. Aaron only spoke for Moses. Moses remained Israel's leader. Both of them reached their greatness. Both of them fulfilled their calling. Two completely different callings. One certainly seen as greater or grander. Neither more important than the other. Okay. So that's my case for no. Despite the ranting of my last few slides, I have another answer. Absolutely yes. Lower your expectations. Lowering one's expectations creates a manageable, more realistic existence. But don't predetermine what I mean by that. Too often, life is ruined by unmet expectations, unwittingly placed upon others. This is not the expectation God has placed on you, but the expectation you place on others. This sets up unsuspecting victims. They fall short of possibly what you have predetermined to be their obligation to you. I certainly am prey to this. And we do this just to appease ourselves. We do it in our relationships. We do it in our friendships. We do it at work. We do it in our pews. We do it probably everywhere. Expectations placed on others, more often than not, never verbalized. I can't tell you how many counseling sessions I've had with people where I hear the phrase, well, he should know or she should know. I shouldn't have to tell him. I shouldn't have to tell her. Only natural, right? It's only natural. Oh, I used that word again, natural. Here we go. Natural is God's nemesis. We know that. For the natural man is the enemy to God. Natural is God's nemesis because natural focuses us solely on self, not on God. Natural also doesn't focus on others. Unless we do what we're doing now, centering wrongly on others through our expectations. So even when we're able to focus on others, it's wrongly. It still turns it back to self. That's what the natural man does. That's why the natural man is the enemy to God. We're fixated on our own experience, not theirs, when we do this. We're not fixated even on God's input. Here we've talked for 5-10 minutes on God's expectations for us. Now we're placing our man-made expectations on others. We then anticipate things never told to these people, making them impossible expectations, but we anticipate them getting done for us. They never know what they've done, or not done for that matter, that are disappointing us. So they keep doing it. So by lowering our expectations, this is the only fair and loving thing to do for others in this case. We can get caught up in this vortex, this swirl of unfulfilled expectations dragging us down, spinning, spiraling downward. Starts in disappointment, probably ends in discouragement. Not just for us, maybe for them too. And they may still not know why. Whatever happened to that relationship? This can be extremely painful for all parties, for them, for us, for God. This can result in our becoming unusable to God. This can result in our becoming unusable to those others. It may cause such a separation that we're no longer useful to each other. It can also result in their becoming unusable to God. Now we're affecting their spiritual life in really critical ways. So we lovingly lower our unrealistic, our unfair, our uncalled for expectations that we have created for others. Should we lower? Absolutely, yes. Okay, this is just a moment of venturing too far into the weeds, but I'm just going to say it anyway. Maybe when we do something like this, placing such high expectations in others, it deflects our responsibility to reach our own high expectations. If I focus on them not meeting my expectations, I don't have to think about my failure in reaching God's expectations. So we deflect that. And if we do that, if we can lower our expectations we've placed on others, we're then motivated to re-engage with our own God-given expectations and take accountability for the tasks before us, from Him to us. These include pursuing and then fulfilling His expectations. And we do all of that in His name so that the glory goes to God. So by not reaching those, we're holding blessings back. And certainly holding praise for God back. Now, the irony, this is my own comment, the irony of my opposing answers, yes and no, is that they're very much tied together. Let me explain. Absolutely no, we should not lower our expectations. Absolutely yes, we should lower our expectations. All sourced in the same place. Their bond is the common cause of love, not a natural love. I believe that both answers, the yes, we should lower, the no, we shouldn't lower, are born from a spiritual love. Love for God, yes. Maintain, confirm, fulfill God's expectations. Love for others, no. Lower the expectations, release them from what we've created as unfounded, unsubstantiated expectations. Then we stay unified with both by lowering, by not lowering. Yes, no is correct. I'm quite comfortable. Both of these answers are sourced in one same place. I'm quite comfortable they're appropriate. Okay, having said all of that, in conclusion, I'm going to bring even another left turn in. I confess to you that we probably need to go easier on ourselves. Ourselves. I'm not saying lower your expectations. I'm just saying lower your judgment of yourself. Just as we strive for perfection, never varying from that, striving for perfection, we also have to be forgiving if we do that. So as we continue pushing forward, reaching for these lofty expectations that God has given to us, we have to also maintain our focus on reaching his intended purpose while remaining generous, remaining pliable, remaining loving to ourselves, because here is going to be the pattern. Try and fail. Try and fail. Try and fail. Whether striving for perfection or striving for his intended expectations. Same pattern. Which finally gets us to next week. We finally arrive at the starting point. In order to try and fail, and continue to improve without giving up, without surrendering, we absolutely must inspect what we expect. May the Lord bless you as again you try to understand, uncover, discover what it is God has intended for you. And then when it's confirmed, you burst forward, reaching what he's intended for you. It's a symphony. Your life is a symphony waiting to be written.